I'm talking with my guest, Zen Garcia. We're talking about his new book, The Firmament, Vaulted Dome of the Earth. And man, time's just flying by way too fast. Dude, I'm going to have you come on for a second show because I know we're barely scratching the surface of this topic.
Right, barely. Yeah.
I mean, you
Yeah.
give me like an outline and we barely even touched hardly any of it. But,
hmm
right before the break, you were talking about the celestial bodies. So go ahead and continue where you left off there.
All right. What I'm about to go into now connects what we're talking about with the heavenly circle in heaven with the movement that I will go into that of my decrypting the Book of Enoch's the motion of the sun and the moon in a circular fashion over the earth as if it's laid out as a clock's face. But one passage before, which again affirms that the luminaries are completely different from the earth and that there's no other in our universe earth-like planets or objects or bodies that have actual terraform which can be inhabited, that these stars, the celestial stars that we see, all of the planets, the wandering stars, they're all luminaries, and they're described as such in the books of Enoch. It says this: on the fourth day, God made the luminaries, sun, moon, and stars of three substances: air, light, and fire. He took aerial material and prepared vessels like lamps, and mixed fire with light and filled them. And because in the nature of fire there was no light, nor heat in that of light, the fire imparted heat to the light, and the light gave luminosity to the fire. And from these two were the luminaries, sun, moon, and stars fabricated. Now, this has to do with the movement, the motions, which those that try to understand what I'm about to go into by applying these motions to the globe Earth, they won't make any sense. It says this: the path of the luminaries is beneath the firmament, and they are not fixed as men have foolishly stated, but the angels guide them. Mar Isaac says, the sun performs his course from the east to the west and goes behind the lofty northern mountains the whole night until he rises in the east. This is from the Book of the Bee. So remember this motion from the east, that's where the sun rises. It goes to the west where the sun sets, and then back towards the north. Well, how does that work if you're on a globe and the earth spinning is what causes the sun, which is in the very center of the so-called solar system, that it's the earth spinning which causes it to set and to rise? How does it go from east to west and then back to the north? Doesn't make sense. And a few more passages and then I'll explain this. This is from the book of the secrets of Enoch, chapter 24, verse 4. For before all things were visible, I alone used to go about in the invisible things, like the sun, from east to west, and then from west to east. Now remember that too. East to west, and then back from west to east. Now he's describing a circle, and I'll prove this. Next passage from the book of Enoch. And this was the verse in the book of Enoch that just I could not make any sense of. And it's because I was applying it to the heliocentric worldview. But when I applied this motion to, again, to a flat earth, a flat circular plane, as if you're looking down from above, then it made sense. It says this: the sun sets in heaven, and returning by the north to proceed towards the east is conducted so as to enter by that gate and illuminate the face of heaven. That's the book of Enoch, chapter 71, verse 8. There's another passage in the book of Enoch, chapter 77, verse 4, that says this, and it applies it to both the sun and the moon. In the orb of the sun, there is a seventh portion of light, which is added to it from the moon. By measure, it is put in until the seventh portion of the light of the sun is departed. They set enter into the western gate, circuit by the north, and through the eastern gate go forth over the face of heaven, which you were talking about, the face of heaven. It also describes it many times, the face of the earth. Now, this is the big one that explains completely all of these motions. And you have to remember that what they are describing here is a circle, the sun moving from the east to the west and then back to the north and to the east in a circle, which is, how it moves in revolution around the North Pole as the center of the Earth plane. This is from the first. I'm going to read the King James version of Ecclesiastes chapter 1, verse 5 through 7, and then the Targum version, which explains it in greater detail. It says this: the sun also ariseth, and the sun goeth down, and hasteth to his place where he arose. The wind, verse 6, the wind goeth toward the south, and turneth about unto the north. It whirleth about continually, and the wind returneth again according to his circuits. Now, in the Targums, what is different is that in verse 6, whereas it attributes the motion, the south and northward motion, to the wind, it actually in the Targum attributes this to the sun. And I'll explain why after I read the passage. It says this from the Targums, Ecclesiastes chapter 1. The sun rises by day from the east side, and the sun sets on the west side at night. And it glides into its place going by the path of the deep. And it rises the next day from the place where it rose there yesterday. It goes along the whole south side by day and returns to the north side by the path of the deep. Round and round it goes to the wind of the northern side at the period of Nisan and Tammuz, which are the vernal equinox and the summer solstice. And on its circuit it returns to the wind of the southern side at the period of Tishri and Tebet, which are the autumnal equinox and the winter solstice. It goes out from the eastern lattices at dawn and enters through the western lattices in the evening. Okay, so what Solomon actually is describing here is exactly what Enoch described as the motion of the sun and moon through the six gates of heaven. And as I explained in the show that we did previously, the six gates of heaven are broken down in, you have to subdivide the space, the expanse between the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn. That there are three gates below the equator, which connect the Tropic of Capricorn with the equator. Those are the first three gates. The first gate is directly above the Tropic of Capricorn. The second gate is in the middle between the Tropic of Capricorn and the equator. And the third gate above the Tropic of Capricorn actually touches the equator. And then the next three gates are the fourth, fifth, and sixth gate. The fourth gate is directly above the equator, moving towards the Tropic of Cancer. The fifth gate is the area in the exact center between the equator and the Tropic of Cancer. And then the sixth gate is the one that touches the Tropic of Cancer. And so what Solomon is describing here is the movement of the sun as it moves towards the north. And in the book of Enoch, and I explained this in great detail in the portion of the book on the tabernacle of the sun, Enoch describes the motion of the sun beginning on the vernal equinox when it's located right above the equator. And then it moves north. For 90 days, 91 days, it moves north until it reaches the Tropic of Cancer. And the reason he does so is because God's calendar, according to the ancient Hebrew lunar calendar, the seasons begin with spring. And spring begins when the sun is exactly on the equator. the vernal equinox begins the season of spring. For 91 days, it moves towards the Tropic of Cancer. When it gets to the Tropic of Cancer for the summer solstice, that begins summer. And then it reverses course and starts to move south, which is what Solomon says. He says, round and round it goes to the wind of the northern side. That's it moving towards the north. In the period of Nisan and Tammuz, the vernal equinox occurs in the Hebrew month of Nisan. The summer solstice occurs in the Hebrew month of Tammuz. And then after it reaches the Tropic of Cancer, it reverses course. And then he says, and on its circuit, it returns to the wind of the southern side at the period of Tishri and Tibet. So Tishri, that's when the autumnal equinox happens. And when the sun reaches the Tropic of Cancer, it reverses course. It begins moving for 90 days towards the towards the equator. On the 91st day, it will reach the equator for the autumnal equinox, and then it moves into the southern latitudes, into the what I call the southern hemisphere plane. And then for the next 90 days, it will move from the equator to the Tropic of Capricorn. It will reach the Tropic of Capricorn in the Hebrew month Tibet, which is when the winter solstice occurs. And then it will reverse course on that 91st day. It will reverse course, and then for the next 90 days, move back towards the equator. And then when reaching the equator, also the winter solstice begins those season of winter, and the autumn, when it reaches the autumnal equinox, that actually begins the season of fall. And so when it reaches the equator again, then that ends the year and it begins a whole new season. And this is exactly what Enoch describes for the motions of the sun through the six gates of heaven, as I explain in great detail in that book and the video that I did explaining how to apply the flat earth as key to decrypt the book of Enoch, the book on the courses of the Heavenly Luminaries.
Dude, my mind is like exploding over here because as you're talking, I pulled up the video that I made back on, when did I post this? August 7th. Oh, wow. Almost exactly a year ago. August 7th, 2015, I did the animation, How the Four Seasons Work on the Flat Earth Model.
Yes, exactly.
That was based off of, interestingly enough, spinning heliocentric ball Earth software,
right?
Stellarium, by simply changing the camera settings and setting my location to Antarctica. And when I did that, I got sort of this, upward view, and then I just flipped it to horizontally so that to have a downward view. And as you were talking, I'm watching this animation go around, and that finally made sense to me now, because I had read some of those passages, and I'm like, I understand it going east to west, but I didn't understand it going north to south until I watched this animation while you were describing that.
Yes.
And, for those of you guys listening to this, you could go to my YouTube channel and just search for How the Four Seasons Work on the Flat Earth Model, and then rewind this archive that we're talking about right now. Listen to Zen say what he just said while watching that animation. And, wow, I mean, okay, so that's because what the animation shows is not only is the sun and moon going around in a circle over the circle of the Earth, but it's tightening its circle.
Right.
And it's expanding its circle. So in essence, it's turning toward the north to tighten. And then at certain times of the year, it's turning toward the south to expand. And it not only does it contract and expand, but it also slows down and speeds up.
Yes, exactly.
Which is extraordinary. And I don't know if because I'm a visual person, I don't know if I would have got that just listening to you.
I'm glad you pulled that up. And when I actually create the video, if you don't mind, I will post that into it so that, people can understand. Because, these passages, the knowledge of these teachings have been lost, as we said, for at least the last half millennia. And people were not able to understand them. And it's because, we've been indoctrinated into the heliocentric worldview, which is a false doctrine. And the fact that all of this information has been encoded into not just the Bible, but all of these extra biblical texts, in my mind, affirms them as being divinely inspired, because they verify the veracity and the authenticity of the biblical account, the Genesis narrative, as given to Moses by the Most High God. And, you can take it exactly for what it is. You don't have to accommodate. You don't have to try to mold it and make it fit our preconceived notions as far as the heliocentric worldview. Into by applying these motions to the globe Earth, they won't make any sense. It says this: the path of the luminaries is beneath the firmament, and they are not fixed as men have foolishly stated, but the angels guide them. Mar Isaac says, the sun performs his course from the east to the west and goes behind the lofty northern mountains the whole night until he...
I'm talking with my guest, Zen Garcia. We're talking about his new book, The Firmament, Vaulted Dome of the Earth. And man, time's just flying by way too fast. Dude, I'm going to have you come on for a second show, because I know we're barely scratching the surface of this topic.
Right, barely. Yeah.
I mean, you feel like an outline, and we barely even touched hardly any of it. Mm-hmm. But, right before the break, you were talking about the celestial bodies. So go ahead and continue where you left off there.
All right. What I'm about to go into now connects Earth-like planets or objects or bodies that have actual terraform, which can be inhabited. That these stars, the celestial stars that we see, all of the planets, the wandering stars, they're all luminaries, and they're described as such in the books of Enoch. It says this: on the fourth day, God made the luminaries, sun, moon, and stars of three substances: air, light, and fire. He took air, what we were talking about with the heavenly circle in heaven, with the movement that I will go into, that of my decrypting the Book of Enoch's, the motion of the sun and the moon in a circular fashion over the earth, as if it's laid out as a clock's face. But one passage before, which again affirms that the luminaries are completely different from the earth, and that there's no other in our universe material and prepared vessels like lamps, and mixed fire with light and filled them. And because in the nature of fire there was no light, nor heat in that of light, the fire imparted heat to the light, and the light gave luminosity to the fire. And from these two were the luminaries, sun, moon, and stars fabricated. Now, this has to do with the movement, the motions, which those that try to understand what I'm about to go